Well, hi everyone. I think I've got an interesting story for you today. I'm recording this video on Monday, March 30th, 2026. An apartment complex in the Orlando, Florida area was evacuated on an emergency basis on March 19th, 2026. So I want to cover in today's video what we know about the situation, and I also want to cover what I suspect may be the likely root cause issue. But this is in Orange County, Florida, in an area called Dr. Phillips at 7343 West Sand Lake Road. This apartment complex is a five-story building that was reportedly built in 2014. And it looks to be a rather high-end apartment development. Looks to be very nice. A Google search indicates that rents are typically in the range of $1,500 to $3,000 a month. The Rialto Apartment Complex. And you'll note that there are several surface features, water features in the area. I'm going to come back to that. And as I mentioned, this Dr. Phillips development is a census designated place and an unincorporated area in Orange County, Florida, obviously a suburb of Orlando. Apparently, it was named after a Central Florida citrus magnate. Now, the local fire chief gave a press conference the day these apartments were evacuated, and the Orlando Sentinel had some good quotes from that press conference. And there's links to all these news sources in the description to this video. What's described as a sudden failure of an Orange County apartment complex was hastily evacuated last week could stem from problems in the ground beneath it. Yes, I would agree with that. And because of foundation concerns, it made sense to get the residents out quickly, experts say. And I would echo that sentiment. The issue at the Rialto Apartments on Sand Lake Road looks to be a building failure caused by differential settlement, which is the uneven sinking of different parts of a building. And this quote comes from a area FSU professor. There were observations of signs of structural instability that included cracks around several doors. A resident of this apartment complex called 911 and reported loud popping, apparently associated with the development of these cracks as she was observing this, and also as she attempted to leave her unit, found that she could not open the door. So the fire department responded, and they found they had to pry the doors open for several of the residents of this apartment complex. So a rather scary situation. This is a source that lists areas of reported settlement throughout this area of Florida. If you zoom in, the arrow indicates the location of this apartment complex. We see several areas of reported subsidence in this location. Here's an aerial view. You can see the pin drop for the apartment complex location, and you can see all these lakes which have overall round shape, and I'm going to come back to that. This is a closer view of this location and the apartment building itself. And what I think could be happening here, again, this is speculation because other possibilities could exist to explain this, but I would strongly suspect the development of a sinkhole. And as we know, Florida, in this area of Florida in particular, has what's called karst topography. That we saw that with all those round lakes in the area. And karst is a solutioning of carbonate bedrock that creates voids in the rock. And when you have overlying surface soils and buildings built on these soils, you can have what's called raveling, where the soil flows into these solution features, cracks and voids, and you lose ground at the surface of, and you have a formation of a sinkhole. And of course, anything that's built over such a location is going to settle. And you can think of it as sand in an hourglass, where maybe you build your building and the initial condition is akin to the upper portion of the hourglass being full. But unbeknownst to you, there's sand raveling or flowing just as you would have in an hourglass, and you have the top surface of the sand settling over time as the underlying voids fill. Now, as I mentioned, the Orange County Building Department came out and ordered an evacuation of the apartment complex. Let's just play this segment here from local building officials.
So we walked the building with fire. We saw obvious signs of fresh cracking on there. Through the drywall, first floor, it got progressively worse as we went up. So we made a determination the building wasn't safe at the moment. We were just waiting for the structural engineer to arrive.
And apparently there's already been a class action lawsuit filed by a number of these tenants who had to evacuate this building. And obviously, there's heightened sensitivity to building distress issues, anything that could potentially indicate imminent collapse, as reported by one of those building tenants who said, she heard loud popping, couldn't get out of her unit. And of course, that's reminiscent of the horrifying and tragic events of Surfside building collapse that killed 93 people. Now, the Surfside collapse, uh, so far, the investigation is still ongoing, hasn't been finalized, but there's no evidence of a geotechnical issue associated with the Surfside collapse. Certainly, there were reported structural issues and inspection and repair and maintenance issues, according to NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. In this case, I think it would be prudent, in addition to any structural engineers that are brought out to evaluate what the condition is of the building and whether it's safe for occupancy, is to bring in a geotechnical engineer to help evaluate the root cause of this apparent building settlement and distress. Now, I've done several videos that have highlighted the Insar satellite technology. I've worked with Value Space, who has provided analysis in several of my past videos, and I think it's an excellent technology. This radar scan is used with public satellites, and in this case, European Space Agency has a satellite that flies over the Earth and makes a pass every 12 days. And the radar data is compared over successive flybys. And doing the analysis of that data, companies like Value Space can determine very small changes. We're talking just a few millimeters in the ground surface elevation over time, whether it's upwards, indicating heave or potential slide movement, or downwards, indicating settlement, which may be an issue here. So I would think that the building owners would avail themselves in this area of just such an analysis. I've got a link in the description if you want to reach out to Value Space. I highly recommend their services, and I really appreciate their past support in a number of my videos. Last year, there was a instance of building settlement that caused reported cracking in the building that was new, and this was adjacent to a sinkhole that developed in the middle of I-80, and this was in New Jersey. And these sinkholes were associated with mine collapse, old iron mines that soil was raveling into these old mine openings, causing surface openings or sinkholes. And Value Space went back and looked at the rooftop elevations to see if they changed over time, and went back over a period of 3 years and showed, up to that point anyway of their analysis, that there was no indicated movement or no signs of uh, concern relative to changes in the elevation of the roof line. And I think just such an analysis would be appropriate here. In fact, even a retrospective analysis on this Rialto apartment complex in Florida, I think would be very, very interesting. Could identify potentially locations of movement, magnitudes of movement, and the pattern of such movement to determine what the root cause likely is. And of course, if a sinkhole is suspected, additional investigations that includes geotechnical soil borings, uh, surface geophysics methods could be employed. Another thing that could be done is, to the extent that there are obvious cracks, crack monitors can be installed across the crack to note changes, the magnitude of movement, whether the crack widens or closes over time. And such data can be very valuable, not just in terms of magnitude of the movement, but the time rate of movement, to see if problems are accelerating with the movement or in fact are stable. I want to thank those of you again who alerted me to this story. I'm going to continue to follow details as city officials release reports and other information about what's going on here. So stay tuned for those updates. I also want to thank those of you who've contributed to buy me a coffee. That's one of the better ways to support this channel. I also want to thank channel members and those of you who provided super thanks, additional great ways to support the channel. So stay tuned for future updates, everyone.